Hey everybody, it's Nathaniel Avila joined with Jessica Vega. We're from San Antonio. I'm in Dallas. What are we talking about? What are we doing? What is this?
We are a true crime podcast, and today we're going to be discussing Outlaws.
The Wild Wild West. Boom 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 boom. Welcome
Mm-hmm.
everybody to the Wild Wild West. Do you feel you're welcome to the Wild Wild West?
uh,
Is that a yes?
uh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep. Before we get started, let's talk about Trump some more.
Okay.
He hasn't
The big
conceded yet.
baby.
He hasn't conceded yet. He still thinks he won.
He's
You
whatever.
know.
I know they're dropping lawsuits, so they're already like.
I know.
I think his people are like that, but not him.
Right. Um. Man. And also, I know Pompeo was like, when he was asked about Pompeo, he was like, "Will there be a good transition, a peaceful transition of power?" And he was like, "There will be a peaceful transition of power for a second Trump administration."
Oh man, these people, and they're so like headstrong. Ugh.
Why? What do you mean?
Like they're so. Whatever he says, they're adamant what happened is the truth. So they say he says that we stole the Democrats stole the election, Biden stole the election. Then that's what they're gonna go with, and the amount of protests and stuff that they're doing because they think everything's fraudulent and corrupt with the elections. Oh my God. The elections people even put out a memo stating that this was the most secure election that they've ever had in history. And if any fraud or anything was to come out of it, that the only truth would be from them. No other resource, no other sources. So to not believe things that you hear outside of them.
Mm-hmm. I know that Trump did say he went to Twitter and he bragged that it was the most secure election in history, while still saying that he was rigged.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like did you see the Million MAGA march?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, but you have heard of
People are
it.
dumb. No, I didn't even hear about it. I don't know what that is.
It's a protest march in D.C. protesting. They wanted to keep Dear Leader still in.
No.
Okay. Uh, yeah, that's our Trump update. Still that.
He just needs to just get over it. Just like they were telling us, right? The whole time, not my president. That's not my president. We had to deal with all their crap for the last 4 years. And now we have to go and undo it.
Mm-hmm. We got to go and undo it, and it's gonna be a while, but we can. I think we got it.
Yeah. Just sit down, please. Please just sit down. Now,
Yeah.
please. Take a seat.
Are you gonna make them take a seat?
They're going to take a seat. Yes, they're going to have to take a seat.
Oh no. You're gonna make them take a seat, and it's gonna be oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about Wild Wild West. Yay! Wild Outlaws.
Pew, pew.
All right, so you ready to talk about some outlaws?
We going to talk about some outlaws.
Okay. So let's talk. I'll tell you spin you a yarn. I'll spin you a yarn about one William F. Downing.
Okay.
Okay, aka Bill Downing, who was a notorious outlaw during the Wild West era in Arizona.
Mm.
So, Downing was born in Texas. Hey, that's where we're from.
Mm-hmm.
He was in trouble. He was in trouble with the law when he came to the Arizona territory with a Texas Rangers posse in pursuit. Allegedly, his real name was Frank Jackson, a teenager who was a member of the Sam Bass Gang. Jackson had been involved in a shootout at Round Rock, Texas, between the between the Bass Gang and the Texas Rangers in July 1878. Jackson was shot in one leg but survived. The posse killed Bass, however. Jackson escaped and rode through New Mexico until he reached Arizona, where he assumed the name William F. Downing. Once he settled down, he sent for his wife, Linda Downing, who was also native to Texas. Downing never spoke about his relationship with the Bass Gang, and he and his wife settled near a small Sulphur Springs Valley mining town of Pierce. Downing worked as a cowhand in nearby ranches. He was hired to work at the Esperanza Ranch, which was known for hiring rustlers, outlaws, and renegade Apaches. Though Downing became known for his quarrelsome nature, he was also known to be less quarrelsome when he was drinking whiskey. All right, so Downing and his wife moved to the town of Wilcox. Downing spent most of his life hanging around saloons and associating with the members of a gang run by Robert R. Burt Alvord, who was a town constable when he wasn't working as a ranch hand. However, there was a particular person whom Downing did not like, and that was William S. Trainer, a.k.a. Slim.
Slim.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he
Trainer.
was really skinny.
Probably. Or maybe it's like one of those names where like it's a misnomer.
Maybe
like,
he was fat.
That's what I'm thinking. Like whenever they have like a big guy, they call him like Little John or something.
Yeah, and he's huge.
Okay, so Trainer, who also went by the name of Bill Trainer, was a native to Tennessee who at one time had been an outlaw, mine guard, and was a veteran Rough Rider campaigning in Cuba with Theodore Roosevelt. He was hired by a cattle inspector, Edwin Russell Hooker, who took over to look after his father, Henry Hooker, Sierra Bonita Range Interests. Trainer was engaged to be married to Mila Allaire, a young lady from a Wilcox ranching family. He suspected Downing of stealing cattle. He suspected Downing of stealing cattle and rebranding them. As such, he made it known publicly that Downing was a rustler and that he was looking for him. On the evening of May 19th, 1899, Trainer and his friend Henry C. Taylor, an off-duty bartender, walked into Tom Fogum's Elite Saloon in the corner of Malley and Haskell Streets. Some witnesses say that Downing came in after Trainer, while others claim that Downing was already in the saloon. Witnesses to the events that followed stated that when Downing walked in, Trainer dropped his right hand as if going for his gun. 4 shots rang out from Bill Downing's pistol, and Bill Trainer lay dead on the bathroom floor, shot through the head and the chest. Downing was arrested, and during his trial, he claimed the following: "I accepted Trainer's invitation to take a cigar, and as I answered, Trainer whirled around, and as though he went after his gun, I stepped up to the bar. I was watching him on account of the threats he had made. He looked out, and I looked outside. I thought it was a life and death matter, and I drew my gun and jerked Thomas Burt's so as to not shoot him and commence shooting. I am certain as to how many shots. I am not certain as how many shots I had fired." So.
Well, he admitted to it.
Constable Alvord testified that he took the pistol and belt off the person of the deceased. He continued the state that he found the pistol loaded with 5 cartridges and only 1 empty chamber. The pistol in the scabbard when he took it off the deceased. No one took and checked Downing's gun. According to Constable Alvord, Trainer's body bore wounds from 3 bullets. One had torn through his breast and exited his shoulder. The other 2 had penetrated his skull. The coroner's jury found that Downing was acting in self-defense and was justified. So it was deemed self-defense.
Because that's what he said it was. I thought I was in danger.
Okay. The coroner's jury did come to that same conclusion. So, Constable Bert Alvord was hired by the town of Wilcox to police the boisterous cowboys in the area because of his reputation of being a bad man in Tombstone. Alvord hired Bill Downing and Billy Stiles as deputies. Together with their newfound legality, they would be able to pursue their criminal careers without arousing suspicion from the townsfolk. Among the members of the newly founded Alvord Stiles gang were local cowboys such as Matt Burtz, the Owen brothers, and Jack Dunlap. They conspired to hold up the Southern Pacific's westbound number 10 train that stopped at Cochise Station at Cochise Junction. In order to carry out their mission, Downing burglarized the Soto Brothers mercantile store in Wilcox where they pilfered dynamite. Then Downing and the gang burglarized a mining camp in Dos Cabezas, where they stole additional dynamite plus explosive caps and fuse. The date set for the robbery was September 9th, 1899. It was Downing's responsibility to tend to the horses. Stiles and Burtz were to stop the train at Cochise Station and proceed with the robbery. They held at gunpoint the engineer, the fireman, the mail clerk, and a Wells Fargo man. The safe inside the express car has blown up. The first heist was successful, and they seized between $2,000 and $3,000 in cash and jewelry. Constable Alvord organized a posse. When news of the robbery reached Wilcox, he sent the posses in all directions except the right one. Downing, Burtz, and Stiles stashed everything in Bert Alvord's chicken house in Wilcox, and when they joined the posse, as expected, the posse did not find anything. The stolen goods were removed from the chicken house and stashed in Bill Downing's ranch near Pierce. The only member of the gang that took his share was Matt Burtz, who headed to the state of Oregon. So what are you thinking so far? What? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I said it was super interesting so far.
So let's see. On February 15th, 1900, the Alvord Stiles gang attempted a second major robbery, this time in Fairbank, Arizona. The members of the gang who participated in the holdup of the New Mexico and Arizona's northbound number 1 on Nogales to Benson line were Jesse Three-Finger Jack Dunlap, Tom Yoez, a.k.a. Bravo Juan, Robert Brown, he doesn't get a nickname, George and Louis Owings, yeah. However, they were unaware that Jeff Milton, a Wells Fargo Express messenger, was aboard the train that day. Milton, an ex-Texas Ranger, had a long career in law enforcement. The gang's attempt to round the train failed because of Milton's intervention. He fired his gun and shot Jack Dunlap despite the fact that he himself was wounded with a bullet in his left arm between the shoulder and elbow, which shattered the bone and left his arm useless. The gang fled the scene and left Dunlap behind. When a posse from Tombstone arrived and found Dunlap, he decided to cooperate and told them the names of those involved in the attempted but failed robbery. Dunlap died shortly after the encounter, but before implicating Bert Alvord, Billy Stiles, and Bill Downing as planners of the robbery. Bill Downing and some other members of the gang were arrested and sent to the jail in Tombstone. Since he had been implicated in the earlier Southern Pacific Cochise depot holdup, at the time, train robbery was a capital offense in the Arizona Territory. Downing's trial was set for December 10th, 1900, in the Tombstone Courthouse in what was officially known as the Territory of Arizona versus W.F. Downing, case number 745A. On April 7th, 1900, Stiles went to Tombstone and went to the jailhouse. He shot Deputy Marshal George Bravin in the foot and freed the gang members who were in the jail, with the exception of Downing. During the trial, some of the members of the Alvord gang turned up against Downing and testified against him. Style and Matt Burtz were among those who testified for the prosecution. However, the majority of jurors believe that capital punishment is not justified in cases where no lives were lost. Jury foreman L.A. Smith announced before Judge George Russell Davis that even though jurors believed that Downing was guilty of train robbery, they refused to return a guilty verdict. Even though Downing was acquitted in the robbery case, he was found guilty with interfering with the United States mail, a federal charge, and was sentenced to 10 years of prison time to be served in the Yuma Territorial Prison. So what do you think about that verdict?
Wow. Okay, so I'm trying to understand this. So they didn't want to find him guilty because he didn't kill anybody?
Yeah, but the charge wasn't murder. It wasn't homicide. It was train robbery.
Yeah.
But in their minds, they believed that they didn't want him to get a guilty verdict because they thought that he was going to get capital punishment, and they didn't think that he would deserve capital punishment because he didn't kill anyone in that case.
I see. But that's not what capital murder is. Or capital. Yeah, I guess they didn't have their thoughts were wrong. I mean, he did get guilty for the train robbery. 10 years in prison.
He got guilty for mail fraud.
Oh, I thought it said Downing was guilty of train robbery. They refused to return a gun. Yeah, I see.
He was actually convicted of mail fraud, and he got 10 years. So let's hear about
what kind of BS is that?
I know. What's wrong with it?
These men were trying to rob a freaking train with money, but that's not what.
Well, he got acquitted. Not guilty, they say.
So ass backwards, they would have supported Trump too.
Oh snap! Mail fraud. Mail fraud, not in my country. You can rob a train all you want as long as you don't kill nobody.
Yeah.
But mail fraud,
not guilty. But I mean, 10 years is still a good amount of time.
Yeah. So
even back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure time still works the same now and then.
Yeah.
10 years back then is still 10 years now.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like everything was so light. It feels like, I mean, because the dollar was light back then.
Talking about
everything.
Inflation.
Yeah, and the sentencing, they didn't even want to find him guilty of a train robbery, but the 10-year sentence for messing with the mail.
Yeah. I mean, the thought process was different back then, in the turn of the 20th century. So let's talk about his time at the Yuma Territorial. So, the prison was built by prisoners in 1875. The prison opened while Arizona was still a U.S. territory, and it wasn't a state yet. So, conditions in the prison were harsh. Some prisoners had to sleep in steel bunk beds. Downing was assigned a number, inmate number 1733, just like any other prisoner. On April 11th, 1901, he entered the Yuma prison through the Sally Port, which is a secure, controlled entryway to the prison. Downing's leg became infected and swollen while he was in prison. This was a result of the gunshot injuries he received during a gun battle while riding with the Sam Bass gang back in Texas. The penitentiary physician, Dr. James A. Kitcherside, treated the old wound. The doctor suggested that the leg be amputated, but Downing refused to accept the request. Mrs. Downing was an attractive lady who was poor in health while her husband was incarcerated. She sold their property in Wilcox and used the money to try to gain her husband's freedom from the prison in Yuma. Mrs. Downing eventually found herself alone and in need of money. She was hired to work in the home of A.F. Franklin in Tucson. On April 17, 1802, She was hired as a domestic servant by Tucson civic leader and entrepreneur John Ivanikovich. A day later, shortly after her husband's release from prison, she was found dead in the servants' quarters. A coroner's jury determined that she had died of heart failure and attributed it to worry and nervousness brought by the conviction and sentence of her husband. Mrs. Downing was buried in the old city cemetery in Wilcox, aka Wilcox Pioneer Cemetery. Downing served a total of 7 years in prison and was finally released for good behavior. According to Thomas H. Rinning, the Yuma prison warden, Downing had been a model prisoner. So, what do you think about that? Isn't that sad?
That's super sad. She was hired on this day, and then the day after she was hired, shortly before her husband's release, she died.
Yeah, she passed away, and she sold all of her possessions trying to get him out.
She spent the rest of her life dedicated to trying to get this dude out of jail.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know if how good of how he was as a husband, but
they don't touch on it. I don't know.
Yeah. So
I mean, she was ride or die.
Yeah, we can't dispute that.
No.
All right, so Downing returned to Wilcox upon his release from prison and opened a saloon which he named the Free and Easy Saloon on the corner of Maley Street. Wilcox at the time had an ordinance which forbade gambling, prostitution, and the serving of alcohol to women. Men can have all the alcohol, though. Downing was known as a one to defy the law, and he hired prostitutes who were highly skilled pickpockets. Constable Bud Snow and Ranger Speed, his name is Ranger Speed, arrested Downing for serving women at the Free and Easy. Downing had encountered Arizona Ranger William Slaughter, Billy Speed. Wait, is his middle name really Slaughter? You're muted still.
Sorry.
What?
Is his name really Slaughter?
His middle name is Slaughter, but he goes by Billy though.
Okay.
Hi, the name is William Slaughter Speed, but you can call me Billy. So Speed was among the jurors who acquitted Downing in 1899, killing of William S. Trainer, or Slim, remember him, despite that they became bitter enemies. Downing pleaded guilty and paid a $50 fine. The very next day, he was arrested again. This time, he was charged with assaulting a barber. Again, he pleaded guilty and paid a fine of $10 whole. I'm sure 10 was a lot back then.
50? Can you imagine? Probably 500.
Probably.
Maybe more.
Let me check.
So what's the year?
1901.
1899.
It was 1901.
Oh, I thought it was 1899.
No, that was the beginning of the story. It's about 300. It's $300. All right, so what was I?
He pleaded guilty and paid $10 whole. Okay.
So the citizens of Wilcox became tired of Downing's defiance of the law and sent a citizens petition to Harry C. Wheeler, the captain of Arizona Rangers, requesting protection from the drunk and unruly saloon keeper. Wheeler received word that Downing had threatened to kill any officer who interfered with him. Thus, Wheeler ordered his men to kill Downing without any hesitation. Downing had some problems with Cuco Leal, a prostitute who lived in his saloon. He went to the office of Constable Snow to complain and ask that she be removed from his saloon. At the same time, he also warned that if Ranger Speed ever stuck his head inside the door of his saloon, he would shoot it off. He also stated that he would kill Speed when the time was right. So Downing had some problems. Oh, wait, I already said that. So the following day, a saloon customer complained that someone had stolen some of his money. Downing jumped into the conclusion that it was Cuco Leal. He confronted and beat her.
Ugh.
She then ran into the Ranchman's Corral saloon, whose owner was George McKittrick, a rival of Downing. McKittrick told Leal to stay in his saloon and to stay clear of the Free and Easy saloon. McKittrick then went to town Justice Page and told him about the Downing Leal situation. Page issued a warrant for Downing's arrest and handing the warrant to Constable Bud Snow. The constable went to Ranger Speed's house and asked him to join him in presenting the warrant. Speed agreed and recommended that they act in the following morning. The following morning, Downing was in his saloon drinking whiskey. He decided that he would show up in Judge Page's office to discuss the Leal situation. He got up to go and at the same time left his gun behind. When he stepped out of the door, he noticed that Constable Snow was heading towards his saloon and he ran back inside. He did not notice that Ranger Speed was accompanying the constable. Once they reached the saloon, Constable Snow told Speed to guard the back door of the saloon, which was located by an alley. Ranger Speed loaded his 30 to 40 Winchester and headed towards the alley door. Downing thought that the constable would come through the front door and decided to leave the saloon through the back exit. When he went out to the alley, he came face to face with Ranger Speed. The Ranger ordered him to surrender, but Downing made a gesture as if he was reaching for his gun, forgetting that he had left his weapon in the saloon. The Ranger then raised his Winchester and fired. The bullet from Speed's rifle entered through his right breast, punctured his right lung, and exited through his right shoulder blade. Downing died immediately. Arizona Ranger Captain Wheeler made the following remark to the community's reaction of Downing's demise. This is the last time I have known a dead man to be without a single friend at the first time that I have known a killing to meet absolute general rejoicing in all this town and precinct. What?
Dang. Kind of harsh.
Yeah.
Hey. He's a dick.
Jeez. Downing was buried in an unmarked grave in the old city cemetery of Wilcox, or the Wilcox Pioneer Cemetery. The coroner's jury found that the shot fired by Ranger Speed was in the performance of his duty as an officer, and that he was perfectly justified in the act, and therefore he was exonerated from all blame in the matter, thus ending the story of Bill Downing.
That was a good story.
Yeah. What do you think? You think Speed was justified? It was justifiable homicide?
Sure.
Sure. That's a very dismissive answer.
Let's backtrack. What happened that led up to this killing of Downing?
Talking about the Last Stand.
The very end, yeah.
Well, he had this prostitute that worked for him, and he didn't really like her that much, and he got a complaint from one of his customers that he had some money stolen.
Okay, and he blamed her right away.
And he blamed her right away. So he basically beat her for a bit. She ran over to his rival saloon and basically hid there. And the saloon guy there, McKittrick, then told the law enforcement, and law enforcement got a warrant for his arrest because of the beating. And so they went over there, and then he tried to run away, and then that's when they shot him.
Yeah, justified.
Okay. So what did you think?
Yeah.
What do you think of Downing? Bad guy?
Yeah. I mean, because we, like you said earlier, like we didn't really know what he was like as a husband, but I can imagine that it's probably, I don't know, his wife, either with people that are victims of domestic violence, especially back then, if she didn't have anybody to turn to, that he was all she knew. So she was dedicated to him.
Right.
But maybe, I don't know, maybe she felt like he would kill her if she didn't try her best to get him out of there.
Right.
But yeah, he probably was like that with her too. You don't just beat women, randomly. That's just who they are.
Right. So let's hear what do you got? What do you got?
Okay. I'm gonna talk about the Newton Gang. You hear
Okay.
about them?
I have not. Let's hear it.
The Newton Gang. They have a movie out, and it's similar. They're similar to the Lawless group, the movie Lawless.
Yeah.
So let's get started on this one. The Newton
The
Gang.
Newton
So we're going to
Gang.
talk about their formation and their outlaw career.
Yeah, let's hear it.
The Newton brothers came of age in Uvalde County, Texas. The four sons of a large cotton farming family were sharecroppers on a newly settled Great Plains. Raised on outlaw stories by their mother, leader of the mastermind, Willis Newton entered the workforce at an early age. He followed the contemporary exploits of outlaw Harry Tracy in the purple press of the time as a newsboy.
Uh-huh.
He says he cried when he heard the stories of Tracy's suicide in October 1902. Willis quit school after a single year of attending classes, too proud to continue when his pants had to be patched in the seat. Aw. It's unclear when the brothers first ran afoul of the law, but sharecropping didn't seem to suit their fierce pride. Willis Newton claims that at the age of 20, he was convicted for a crime he didn't commit. His brother Wiley Doc Newton, stole loose cotton from the loading dock of one processing gin and tried to sell it to another. Unable to find Doc, local authorities arrested J. Willis Newton, born January 19th, 1889, and charged him instead. A local jury convicted Willis on slim evidence, and he was sentenced to a year in the brutal Texas state prison system, where he was forced to pick more cotton. His attitude hardened quickly in the face of inhumane conditions and his perception of the injustice of it all. Doc soon joined him, entering the prison system soon after, possibly for robbing the post office of stamps. And stamps cost nothing. Like, even right now, they don't cost hardly anything.
Yeah.
Anyways, the record indicates simply it was for a theft of less than $50. From 1909 until 1918 to 1920, the two brothers were in and out of the Texas penal system due to their many escape attempts, which led to further sentences and a deeper hardening of attitudes. Eventually released, Willis began a career of petty theft, usually involving the nighttime theft of clothing from general stores. Brothers Jess and Joe. So Jess is older and Joe is younger.
Okay.
Maybe like the youngest of them all. They stayed out of the penal system until later, working regularly on bronc busters and ranch hands. I don't know what that means, but we'll find out, I guess. In 1994, Willis Newton began a more serious criminal career. He, an accomplice, robbed the Southern Pacific Railroad passenger train in Klein, Texas, 18 miles west of Uvalde in southwest Uvalde County, taking 4,700, equivalent to about 100,019 in 2019. At gunpoint from passengers. They stole that from people that were in the actual train. Then in 1916, Willis robbed a bank in Boswell, Oklahoma, in the company of a gang he joined in Durant, Oklahoma, taking just over $10,000, equivalent to about $234,000 in 2019, and escaping on horseback. In 1917, he went back to prison for burglary, but eventually forged letters to secure a pardon. Upon release, Willis served an apprenticeship of sorts with a crew of bank burglars, with a routine lineup due to accidental death and reckless behavior. Pride and intelligence led Willis to decide to form his own crew and eschew the wilder elements of his previous partners in crime. Joining forces with an experienced safecracker seems to have been the turning point. So in 1920, operating out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Willis Newton formed what others eventually called the Newton Boys, along with the Brent Glasscock, a safecracker and expert in high explosives, convincing his cowboy brothers Joe and later Jess to join his outfit. Doc's successful 1920 escape from prison in Texas enabled him to join the brothers soon after. And with his acquaintance as Nucleus, what does that even mean? The crew had a good run, robbing banks across Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Colorado, North Dakota, Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Canada. Others suspected robberies in Oregon and Washington state, but they haven't been confirmed. So most of their heists were committed at night, with them breaking in and busting the bank safe without ever having to come into contact with any people or authorities. Though bribing a corrupt insurance official with the Texas Association of Bankers, Willis obtained a list of banks that still possessed older models of safes that were vulnerable to their brand of attack, which involved forcing nitroglycerin into cracks in the square door and setting the explosive off with dynamite caps. The resulting explosions were messy and loud, but the gang liked to operate in the dead of the winter in small towns where two men armed with shotguns could keep few townspeople at bay while the money was hustled out to waiting cars. Studebaker and Cadillac being the preferred makes. Prior to entering the bank, Willis usually shinned
up. Or maybe you mean shibbied.
Shinnied up a pole. Oh, I see. It's like when they go up with the pole.
Yeah.
Outside the telephone office to cut the phone lines at a strategic point, thereby ensuring a clean getaway once the county line had been reached. In Hondo, Texas, the gang hit two banks the same night after discovering the first vault door open. Occasionally, the tactics would change and the crew planned daytime robberies like in New Braunfels, Texas, a simple bank holdup on March 9th, 1922, or the daring and overly ambitious multiple attacks on pedestrian bank messengers in Toronto, Ontario, Canada on July 24th in 1923. When the Toronto Currency Clearinghouse was hit in downtown morning rush hour, a melee ensued when the bank messengers refused to surrender their bags at gunpoint, and the Newtons' reluctance to actually carry out the threats to shoot collided. Gunfire was exchanged eventually, and two messengers were wounded by Willis in the struggle and the subsequent getaway. Two bags netted the gang some 84,000 Canadian dollars, but spoiled their reputed nonviolent record. In other robberies, the patrons and bank employees often described them as being extremely polite, going out of their way to make sure everyone was comfortable.
Good job.
Right? Except for that one in Canada. The take from most bank jobs was not large, often less than $10,000 in combined cash and negotiable bonds. Liberty bonds and victory bonds often formed the bulk of the take, stolen from individual deposit boxes. Various bonds and other securities were fenced through underworld connections in Chicago. The Willis Glasscock cultivated contacts. Methodical to the last, Willis insisted on carrying out even the coins from the banks. We never get enough. When I go in to get anything, I want to get it all. He liked to brag. Ambitious, Willis invested a great deal of his money into oil wells in Smackover, Arkansas, and mineral wells, Texas, hoping to make it big during the boom times for the industry when millionaires were being made overnight. Doc and Jess enjoyed the good life, visiting Kentucky Derby and the Indianapolis 500 several times, and enjoying the nightlife in Kansas City, Chicago. and the like between jobs, eating the finest restaurants and staying in the nicest hotels, thereby avoiding suspicion. Willis persuaded Joe to invest with him in various oil wells, all of which failed to produce. Born into poverty, the brothers did not save much. Joe joked, "Why didn't you invest that money in something that makes it grow?" "Why?" I said. "Who wants a better job than what we already got?" That's what we thought then. I need any change, right? I need any change or any money.
Any
Any
money.
money. Any money. Go out and rob another bank. Dang. Interstate crime was difficult to police in those years. Anonymous and fast-moving, the Newton gang received very little attention from law enforcement, despite the large number of robberies they committed. However, that would change when they robbed their sixth train, Milwaukee Road's Fast Mail, a postal train, in June 12, 1924. Yep, those postal trains. We know what happened. That last story.
Oh no, what happened?
Oh, I don't know what happened here, but they don't care about the money. Just don't mess with the mail. See, that was the lesson we just learned.
That mail seems to be a big thing. A certain somebody's messing with the mail right now.
Okay. The gang had teamed up with Chicago gangsters, two racketeers, and a corrupt postal inspector named William J. Fahey. Oh, they had a corrupt postal
Somebody
inspector.
inside.
So they got an insider
Named
using inside
Louis
information to rob a
DeJoy.
postal train and originating in Chicago. Headed north and west carrying large amounts of currency from the Federal Reserve, commissioned 4 banks along the route. Boarding the train secretly in Chicago, Willis and Jess climbed into the engine and stopped the train at a remote crossing in Rondout, Illinois. The robbery netted them more than $3 million in one take. It was the largest train robbery in history. However, during the robbery, the engineer had overshot the crossing in his nervousness and had to back the train up, causing some of the robbers to move out of position. In the confusion, wily Doc Newton was wounded 5 times with a .45 caliber pistol fired by Brent Glasscock, who mistook him for an armed postal worker in the dark. Ooh, friendly fire.
What a
The
dummy.
gang took the money, loaded the dog into a vehicle, and left the scene. While loading into the vehicle, a bystander supposedly heard one of the robbers say the name on his way out, offering $20,000. Wait, say the name Willie, right? Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Say the name Willie, which was later testified to at the trial. Doc and Joe were arrested at first. In a Chicago tenement, after police were tipped about an underworld's doctor's visit to aid the wounded man, Willis was arrested when he returned to the room the next day, but very nearly bribed his way out, offering $20,000 cash to the arresting officers, who wanted to take it but were double-crossed by a supervisor after the money changed their hands. Oh,
boss.
dang. It's people. With Doc, Willis, and Joe Newton captured, Glasscock hid the bulk of the money, and Jess Newton evaded capture and headed south to Texas with $35,000. Eventually, all those involved with the robbery were arrested, and papers reported that all but $100,000 was recovered. Well, that's pretty good out of $3 million. But still, 100,000 is 100,000. Facing stiff sentences, the gang members agreed to testify against Faye and the racketeers, and the prosecution played up the affair as a success for the law, having made an example of the crooked postal inspector and his mob connections. The exact amount stolen and recovered was impossible to determine, as some insurance claims were not filed, and various deals were cut behind closed doors. Glasscock was very likely kept a low to mid 6-figure sum of loose diamonds, untraceable bonds, etc., having eluded the law for the longest period. Having pleaded guilty and supplied key testimony in convicting others, Glasscock took the witness stand in place of Willis, partially as a repayment for his accidental shooting of Doc. The gang received relatively light sentences due to no one being injured but their own gang member. And you see right there? You see?
Well, if you didn't kill anybody, I guess no harm done.
Exactly. But their own gang member. And the majority of the money had been returned. Chicago newspapers portrayed the Newton boys as colorful cowboys due to the fact that Jess was brought to Chicago wearing rodeo clothes, having been tricked across the border into Del Rio, Texas on a baroom bet involving a bronc ride at an Independence Day rodeo. The arresting officer was Texas Ranger Harrison Hammer, a brother of Frank Hammer. The admitted missing sum of $100,000 was never recovered. Jess Newton had buried some of it in the northwest of San Antonio. But being drunk when he did so, he could never remember exactly where. Jess and Joe, lacking criminal records, received the lightest sentences, and these two brothers returned to Uvalde, Texas, where they led respective lives. And for the most part, Willis and Doc spent years in Leavenworth. And on release, Willis returned to Tulsa, where he ran a series of gas stations and nightclubs, and seems to have maintained criminal connections. He rarely spoke about these years in much detail, but he was involved in the local nightclub wars and was a victim of an assassination attempt at one point, being shot through the bathroom window while shaving. He survived, and prominent episodes of nightclub arson were reported in the same time period. After the April 6, 1934 murder of Constable Carl Campbell, Joe and Willis Newton allowed the Burrow gang to hide out in a house they owned in Tulsa. The famous fan letter to Henry Ford, purportedly from Clyde Burrow, was mailed from Tulsa on April 10th, 1934. It may have been written at the Newton house. Willis Newton's personal opinion of Bonnie and Clyde was quite low. He called them silly kids who only robbed filling stations and indiscriminately killed people. In 1934, both Willis and Joe were sentenced to nearly 10-year sentences in Oklahoma for a bank robbery they did not commit based on specious testimony. They served at least 7 years each. Joe returned to Uvalde, having already renounced the crime in 1924, and Willis returned to Tulsa and the nightclub life, but in early 1950s also moved back to Uvalde, where he managed to stay out of prison and the limelight for the most part. Doc Newton was again arrested for a bank robbery in 1968 in Rowena, Texas, but due to his old age, the charges were dropped. Willis Newton was implicated in another robbery in 1973 in Brackettville, Texas, but there was insufficient evidence to arrest him.
Also, the word that you were trying to read was barroom.
Barroom. What is that?
Barroom? It's like a bet that you make at a bar, like that you were drunk in.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
All right. Well, let me. These are how this is when they died.
Okay.
What they died of.
Let's hear it.
Jess Newton died on March the 4th in 1960, having lived out the remainder of his life as a cowboy in Uvalde. A veteran of the Texas Brigade of World War I, he died in a VA hospital. He never was able to remember where he buried the money and often complained about the big country being taken off the gold standard, since he apparently lost a great deal of money when stolen bonds were left unredeemed. Doc was hospitalized after a rough beating during his last arrest and never fully recovered, although he lived until 1974, dying at the age of 83. Willis lived to the age of 90, fierce and unrepentant to the end. He died of old age on August 22nd, 1979. Willis lived in the town of Uvalde, owner of a cafe and other small businesses, and an avid horseman into the 80s.
Into his
Younger
80s.
brother into his 80s.
Yeah.
Youngest brother, Joe Newton, died at the age of 88 on February 3rd, 1989. And that is the story of the Newton gang.
Right. There was a 1998 film called The Newton Boys starring Matthew
Yeah.
McConaughey, Skeet Ulrich, Ethan Hawke, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Dwight Yoakam, based on
So if
them.
you want a visual on this story, you can check out that movie. I think I want to check it out.
Yeah. And it looks like Joe Newton appeared on The Tonight Show and was interviewed by Johnny Carson in November 1980, who was like 79 years old at the time.
Wow. So
So, do you think the money's still out there?
I don't even know where to begin.
It says
Like
Northwest. There, that's a start.
somewhere in the west of San Antonio.
Northwest.
Northwest. Well, I don't know if you've been over here, but there's buildings and they're building and building and building and building over here on this side of town. So I don't know. There's still a lot of untapped land over here, though.
You want to go try to search for $1.5 million in today's money?
Yeah, I don't. It's just a part of that. A part of that money that was stolen. Not. We don't even know how much of it. Right?
It was $100,000. It was $100,000, which is worth $1.5 million today.
And he thinks he buried some of it in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know.
You want to go find it? We got to go find it.
Let's go get it.
Okay. We're going to be treasure hunters.
That money, I don't even think it's worth anything now.
It is worth a lot. It's worth,
you think?
Yeah, it's worth $1.5 million.
Let's go get it. Let's go do it.
Okay. I'll get 70% and you'll get 10%.
No, it was my story. I found it.
You would stab me in the back? You would betray me? Joker
would,
style?
Mr. 70%.
Joker style? That was a good story. I liked it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. I want to watch the movie now.
Okay.
I'll save it. I'll save it. Are you going to come over here for Thanksgiving?
No.
Or you don't know?
No, we're not going anywhere for Thanksgiving.
Oh, I didn't know if you were already going to be here.
No.
But
it'll be after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It's on Stars if you want to watch it.
I don't think I have that anymore.
I have Stars.
Okay.
Okay. So let me tell you another story. The story about Robert Ewing Younger.
Okay.
AKA Bob Younger. And he was an American criminal outlaw and the younger brother of Cole, Jim, and John Younger. So, born in Missouri on October 29th, 1853, Robert was the 13th of 14 children born to Henry Washington Younger and Bathsheba Lighton Fristow. During the Civil War, his brothers Cole and Jim rode with Quantrill's Raiders. Bob was only 8 when the war broke out in 1861. He saw his father killed by Union soldiers and his home burned to the ground. So after the war, his brothers formed the James Younger Gang with Frank and Jesse James. Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
For 10 years, the gang robbed banks, trains, and stagecoaches across Missouri, Kansas, and other nearby states. Bob Younger is believed to have first joined the gang in 1873. In September 1876, the gang attempted to rob the First National Bank in Northfield, Minnesota. The citizens included many Union Army veterans who fought back effectively. And in the ensuing shootout, all 3 of the younger brothers were wounded and captured. Bob was wounded in the elbow and later in the chest. 2 Northfield citizens were killed in the botched raid. Bob Younger was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. He died of tuberculosis in prison at Stillwater, Minnesota on September 16th, 1889, at the age of 35. His body was shipped to Lee's Summit, Missouri, where a funeral was held, and he was buried in the Lee's Summit Cemetery. thus ending the story of Bob Younger.
Wow, that was so short.
Well, I mean, he didn't really do much. He was a guy. He robbed banks. And
And
that's
then he
it.
died.
And then he died of tuberculosis.
Dang, tuberculosis was a killer back then.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty much wiped
That
out
and
now.
what was the other one? The plague.
The plague was a lot earlier than that.
But still, it was just like those were killers.
Oh yeah. Before that, well, after that, the Spanish influenza was after that. That was in the 1910s. So let's. Oh, I think that you're talking about cholera.
No, I didn't even know what that is.
Cholera.
Tuberculosis was. Ugh.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about one that has a bit more substance, which is the story of Frank McCleary.
Frank McCleary.
Or Mac McCleary. Born Robert Finley McCleary. So he was an American outlaw. I bet you didn't know that.
No.
So
McCleary.
Frank was born in Courtright, New York. He was one of 11 children born to Margaret Rowland and Robert Houston McCleary, a descendant of Matthew McCleary of Ireland and his son Thomas McCleary of Courtright, New York. The family worked a farm in Meredith, Delaware County, New York. The father, Robert, moved the family to a new farm near Belle Plaine in Benton County, Iowa, in 1855, where Robert also practiced law. So his mother, Margaret, died when an epidemic of typhoid swept through the community on October 11th, 1859, when Frank was 9. Frank's father, Robert, was 65 years old in August 1875. By that time, he had lived as a widower for over 15 years. He was the father of 11 children, 6 of them sons, but by 1875, 2 of his sons had already died. His father remarried widow and neighbor Jane Arbuthnot on September 13th, 1860. 8 of his siblings, including Frank, were still living at home, and were 8 of Jane's children. Frank's older brother, Edwin McCleary, joined the 14th Iowa Volunteers, which saw action in the Battle of Fort Donelson and Pittsburgh Landing. Edwin was captured and imprisoned at Macon, Georgia, and after he was paroled, he came home but died in October 1862 from the effects of starvation and disease. So another brother, Will, was still serving in the Union Army and would not attend Edwin's funeral. And could not attend Edwin's funeral. After the war, the McCleary family moved 50 miles north to Buchanan County, Iowa, to farm land in an unincorporated portion outside Hazleton Township known as Buffalo. Tom and Frank helped their father work the 800-acre farm. By 1859, only Frank, known as Rob within the family because his name, like his father, was Robert, Christiana, known as Anna, Tom, and Sarah Caroline, the youngest of the clan, who they called Carrie, were living on their father's farm. In 1872, the elder McCleary, age 65, remarried 35-year-old widow Anna Lavina Miller Lee. She was 2 years younger than Frank. Only Frank, Tom, and Carrie remained at home. She had 5 children from two 13-year-olds. Okay. What?
She had kids from a 13-year-olds?
No, she had 5 children
from starting from 13-year-olds and
yes. Yeah.
Get my head out the gutter.
It is kind of weird that his dad married a woman who was 2 years younger than you.
At 65? Yeah.
Well, his wife, the person you married was 35.
She either saw a paycheck or... He's about to die.
At 65, probably in
Right,
1859.
back here, back then.
In 1872, I mean. By
Yeah.
1875, the youngest daughter of Robert and Margaret, Anna, married and moved away, and by this time, two of her brothers had died. Frank had 13 siblings and half siblings. Frank and his brother, Tom, left Iowa in 1875 for Fort Worth. For Fort Worth. Isn't that great?
That's great.
Their brother Will had completed college and moved with his family to Fort Worth, where he opened a law practice. Around the time he was in Fort Worth, Robert Finley stopped using his given name and began going by Frank, a modern derivative of his middle name, Finley. Will later became a judge in Fort Worth, and both Frank and his younger brother Tom McCleary studied pre-law. In 1878, Frank and Tom may have joined a cattle drive working for either John Slaughter or John Chisholm. Hey, my name's John Slaughter. Nice to meet you.
John Chisholm.
John Chisholm? You mean John Chisholm?
So it was either John Slaughter shut up, or John Chisholm. Chisholm. Same person.
No, two different guys, I think.
Oh, they're two different
Wait,
dudes.
are they two different guys? Yeah, they're two different guys.
Yeah.
They don't know, but they don't know which of the guys he was he was working for. It was either Slaughter or Chisholm.
Okay.
So
got it.
So they moved to Hereford, Arizona, where they got a job working for Old Man Clanton. The Clanton family owned one of the largest cattle operations in Arizona. When Old Man Clanton sold his ranch to purchase another holding because of the San Pedro River in southern Arizona, Ike Clanton remained behind. The McCleary brothers and Ike became fast friends. All right, so this guy seems to be a pretty stand-up guy so far, McCleary. He studied law. He has a pre-law degree. He's working as a ranch hand. Pretty good stuff. So how did he become?
What happened?
Yeah, let's see what happened. How did he descend to a life of crime? So in 1879, the two brothers were experiencing some success in their cattle business, and they purchased land and built a house at Soldier's Hole along the Babacomari Creek, a tributary of San Pedro River. Another account says that they never held title to the land, but that it was owned by Frank Patterson. Nearby Tombstone, Arizona was just beginning to see its population explode due to the silver rush. Frank briefly associated local constable Melvin Jones in apprehending soldiers who had stolen government horse harnesses. The soldiers attempted to bribe the two men, but McCleary and James both insisted they submit to arrest. Wow, so they're incorruptible. So what's going on? I wonder what the twist is.
Yeah.
So sometime after their arrival in the San Pedro River Valley, they met Curly Bill Brocius. On October 27th, 1880, the two brothers were with Brocius when he accidentally shot and killed Tombstone Marshal Fred White. The two men were briefly detained before he died. White stated that the shooting was accidental and Brocius was released. The McCleary brothers were suspected of stealing cattle from Corona, Mexico, and reselling them to Old Man Clanton and local butchers. So, are you okay?
Hey. No, I'm listening.
Okay. So on July 25th, 1880, Captain Joseph H. Hurst requested the assistance of Deputy U.S. Marshal Virgil Earp, who brought Wyatt and Morgan Earp, as well as Wells Fargo agent Marshall Williams, to track the thieves of 6 U.S. Army mules stolen from Camp Rucker. This was a federal matter because the animals were U.S. property. Acting on a tip, they found the animals on the McCleary Ranch in the Babacomari River and the branding iron used to change the U.S. brand to D8. To avoid bloodshed, Cowboy Frank Peterson promised to return the mules, and Hearst pressed the posse to withdraw. The cowboy showed up 2 days later without the mules and laughed at Captain Hearst and the Earps. Hearst responded by printing and distributing a handbill describing the theft and promising a reward for the trial and conviction of the thieves. It said, It is known that the stolen animals were secreted at or in the vicinity of the McCleary brothers' ranch, and also believed that they were branded on the left shoulder over the government brand. Hearst specifically charged Frank McCleary with assisting with hiding the mules. It was reprinted in the Tombstone Epitaph on July 30th, 1880. Frank McCleary angrily printed a response in the cowboy-friendly Nugget, calling Hearst unmanly, a coward, a vagabond, a rascal, a malicious liar, accusing Hearst of stealing the mules himself. Virgil reported that Frank accosted him and warned him, if you ever again follow us as close as you did, you will have to fight anyway. So no, snap, he's making enemies.
Mm-hmm. Stealing mules.
So in November 1879, shortly after arriving in Tombstone, a prize horse of Wyatt Earp's was stolen. More than a year later, he learned the horse had been seen in Charleston and was in the possession of Ike Clanton and his brother Billy. Earp and Doc Holliday rode to the Clanton Ranch near Charleston to recover the horse. On the way, they overtook Sheriff Johnny Behan, who was riding in a wagon. Behan was heading to the ranch to serve an election hearing subpoena on Ike Clanton. According to Wyatt's testimony later, 18-year-old Billy Clanton asked him insolently if he had any more horses to lose, but he gave the horse up without first being shown the ownership papers, demonstrating to Wyatt that Billy knew to whom the horse belonged.
Yep.
All right, so in early 1881, shortly after the Cochise County was created, Tom and Frank moved their ranching operations to the Sulphur Springs Valley. They dug a well and built a substantial adobe ranch house, a barn, corrals, and irrigation ditches for farming. They owned 8 horses, 2 mules, and 140 cattle. They began planning their visit to their sister Sarah Caroline McCleary in Iowa, who was set to be married on November 30th. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
But on October 26th, 1881, the McCleary brothers were in Tombstone to conclude a cattle deal. Tensions between the Earps and the Cowboys had escalated. Ike Clanton had been cited earlier in the day for carrying a weapon in town, after which Tom McCleary had arrived to get Ike. Wyatt Earp and McCleary had heated exchange, and Wyatt later testified he saw a pistol on Tom's waistband and buffalo Tom. What is buffalo, you mean? That's pistol whipping. It's like doing that with the pistol. So later on the day, the Clantons and McClearys, along with Billy Claiborne, faced off against the Earps and Doc Holliday in the gunfight at the OK Corral. Some witnesses testified that Frank and Billy Clanton drew their weapons first, while others loyal to the Cowboys supported their version of events, in which Tom opened his coat to show he was unarmed. The Earps and Holliday killed Frank and Tom McCleary along with Billy Clanton. All 3 were buried in Tombstone's Boot Hill Cemetery. Their brother, William McCleary, spent most of his finances in pursuing charges against the Earps and Doc Holliday. Tom left his pistol at a nearby saloon at some point that afternoon, but the Earps had no way of knowing that. Tom McCleary had $3,000 in his possession when he died during the shootout, a fact that the prosecution emphasized during the preliminary hearing that followed the shootout. His brother William, who joined the prosecution team, wrote in a letter home to Texas that his brothers had sold their herd of cattle and were leaving Tombstone shortly to come be with him in Fort Worth. He said that they were in Tombstone on business, with plans to depart shortly afterward to visit him in Texas. They have been arranging a cattle deal with their neighbor E.B. Frink, with butchers Bauer and Kehoe. Although the modern historians have called him a gunfighter, others say he was not. The gunfight at the OK Corral is believed to have been his only violent confrontation, thus ending the story of Frank McCleary. What do we think?
Well, he was doing fine until he got into the mule business.
He started stealing mules
Yeah,
from
I'm thinking he needed money. That's it.
he had
And
three
that's what
thousand
happened.
dollars.
Just went south.
Yeah,
Just where it starts.
he had like $3,000 though. In when was this? 1870,
Yeah.
1875 or so. That was like a lot of money. Or unless he got that from bootlegging cows. Uh, that was like
Probably.
$71,000
That's a lot. But for me,
of
that's a lot.
mules.
I mean,
Yeah. So yeah, like he started pretty good. He was sounding like a pretty upright citizen, and then he started just stealing mules from the government with his brother, and then he kept on being mean to Earp, Wyatt Earp, and the other Earps, and like other law officials, until it just escalated so much that he ended up dying in this very infamous shootout. So, what do you think? Good guy,
I,
bad guy?
I don't know. Good guy turned south.
Mm. We don't know like why he started just stealing mules.
No, it just like happened. I
Mm.
just said, fuck it.
Maybe they thought that it was an easy way to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, those are our stories of outlaws today. So that was pretty good, pretty interesting stuff. Uh,
Mm,
what do you think?
yeah. Outlaws. Yeah. I mean, I hadn't really like looked into this topic um prior to you mentioning that you wanted to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
when I started like looking into it, it's a lot of interesting stories. This is our history.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of our history. It's crazy. The amount of train robberies and all of this is most of it is for money, like not even for the murders. It's mainly just to get money. And then the backwards justice system too. If you didn't kill anybody, that's fine. It's fine.
That's right.
But if you mess with the
Acquittal.
mail,
Don't mess with the mail, or you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna catch these hands if you mess with the mail.
note to self: okay to rob trains, just not mess with the mail, and
Yeah.
don't kill anybody.
Mm.
But this was back in the day. Things have changed.
Yeah. Now it's like, oh no, you said a curse word to the chair. Yeah, like I guess they the I guess people in the Wild West like really liked the mail. Like they
Well, I mean,
valued the
think about
mail.
it. Like that was their only other way of communication if you weren't face to face.
Right.
That was it. There was like no phones. There wasn't anything else. Radio. I mean, I don't even know if that was a thing back then.
Oh, I don't think it
Well, I don't
was.
know when the radio came about, but yeah. So you're basically messing with somebody's cell phone.
Right. Have you ever like the person who discovered radio waves thought that it was like the most useless thing in the world? Yeah, like I remember when he was asked what benefits that this could bring to the society, he was like, I don't know, probably nothing.
Well, it's kind of like the people that made the internet didn't really see it being as insane as it is now. They
Oh
were just
yeah.
like, yeah, we're just creating this for our work
Oh yeah,
because
they thought
we
people.
need some sort
Yeah,
of way of communicating with each other.
yeah, people thought it was like going to be a passing fad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And now it's like people can't freaking operate without it.
I know. I guess in the same way, people couldn't operate without mail.
Yeah, and the mail was their one big thing, the only one big thing they had to be able to keep in contact with people that weren't close to them.
Right.
That's
It's
it.
also like that one that in your Newton story case, the Newton gang case where they had the book thrown at him for stealing stamps.
Stamps!
Yeah,
Freaking stamps!
stamps. That's part of the mail. Don't mess with the
What do they
mail.
cost? What does a stamp cost right now?
I don't know,
Like,
like 60 cents.
let's see.
50 cents.
50 cents, Ida. And that's right now in 2020.
What? Oh, how was that in like 1875? What was it like a handshake?
A wink.
let's let's see. I don't know. Let me check.
In what, 1820?
1875 USD 2020 to 1875. Bu- 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 No, I want it reversed. 20 to 1875.
3 cents?
It was 2 cents.
2 cents?
It was 2 cents
Oh, you can buy yourself a whole pack of gum with that.
for 2 cents.
I wonder, because have you ever been over here in San Antonio? We have a store called San Antonio Shoe, and they have it all set up like old school, and they sell bottle Cokes, like the small bottle of Cokes, the glass ones,
Ooh.
for I think it's either 10 cents or 15 cents, and then little bags of popcorn for like 10 cents.
Oh, that sounds like a terrible business model. It's a great way to go out
No,
of
it's
business.
just because they just want to keep up the model, the way that the business is, but their shoes are pricey.
Okay, is that how they get their
The
money?
shoes
Is
are
the shoes?
pricey, yeah, because they're made in San Antonio and they're really comfortable.
Oh, snap. We gotta go so I can slap $1 and give me your whole stash.
I know. I don't know if they put a cap on how many people could purchase at the same time, because it is cheap. It's super cheap.
Just slap down $1. It's like, give me your entire inventory
I want a whole dollar's worth of Cokes.
for 10 cents.
You.
I think that's like 10 Cokes with because 10 cents
That's
plus
not enough for you. Because they're like this little.
like that's pretty big.
That's not big. That's little. It's a little
It
glass.
looks like it looks like it's big as your face the way you're doing it.
And my face isn't big.
Smaller than your face, like half your face. I used to get like the actual glass Cokes. Um, they sell them at like Walmart or Kroger's
Uh-huh.
or whatever, and I do usually get them mainly because I like using my can opener, my bottle opener, go like psst, like that. They really took the mail seriously. And I know, like, I mean, today, I mean, there were like a certain somebody has been trying to tamper with the mail, but in today's day, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody, all them Democrats fooling around with their votes.
with the mail-in votes. People have been doing mail-in voting since the Civil War.
Just stop the counting already.
That ship has sailed.
That's funny.
That ship has left the dock and reached its destination. So like, yeah, that's what happens because Trump got rid of the last postmaster general, implemented a new postmaster general who was a Trump loyalist, and he tried to redo the entire postal system in order to coincide with what Trump wanted.
Okay.
Master General. What's his name? I know his name is. His name is. Somebody. Postmaster. Who's the Postmaster General? Louis DeJoy. Louis DeJoy is his name. And man, that guy is such a Trump loyalist. But I think the courts had to reel him back and everything. So, yeah, that's what the state of the mail is.
I mean, I know a lot of it had to do with the fact that the reason why it's taken so long. And I haven't even checked, to be honest. Are they done?
They're done.
Georgia was the last one, but I hadn't finished. They hadn't finished counting yet.
I think they're done. I'm pretty sure they're done. Yeah. And
No, it's not done yet.
Not done. Oh, come on.
Not Georgia.
Georgia, I'm pretty sure it is.
Georgia still hasn't declared.
Hasn't been declared yet?
They haven't declared it yet.
Oh, I do declare. You're taking an eternity, Georgia. Hurry
Yup.
up.
Did you
But
see his votes went up to 232?
yeah, because they gave him North Carolina.
Yes. Well, North Carolina is all racist.
Oh,
Just kidding.
snap.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. I don't know.
The thing about like the election map, if you look into all like the red states,
It's all the rural areas.
it's all like all of the cities are all blue. Like all the cities around there are blue. The only one that I've seen that isn't like that is Oklahoma, where it's red across the board. So I don't know.
It says, the headline says, Trump says Biden won, but again refuses to concede.
Yeah, because he was like, Biden only won because it was rigged.
No.
I'm like, dude, like, did you just so you admit that it was?
So my thing now is, now he's not letting him have, he's not allowing him to have the access he's supposed to have while transitioning. And I'm just like, why? What's wrong with you? I know you're a big baby. I know you're a sore loser, but I just feel like it's giving him more time to hide stuff and clear stuff out that he's done, you know?
Right. Man, I don't know. Trump's living like rent free in our minds right now. Even after we said we were done talking about him, we're still talking about him.
He's a dick.
Oh, snap. Okay, let's do some role play. I'm gonna be Trump, and you say what you want to say to Trump. Okay.
No.
Hello, it's me, the Donald.
Go away.
That's all you would say is go away.
Just go away.
I gotta tell you, Jessica.
Go hide away in all your houses, play golf, get out of our faces. We're done.
Okay.
No, we're just done.
We're done.
I'm tired of Biff's world.
Biff's world. I think we're done. I think we're finally free. Hopefully, but I don't know. June 20th can't come fast enough.
I know. Okay, are we done with this podcast thing?
No, I haven't done the outro yet.
Okay, let's do the outro.
All right, that's Wild West. We keep on getting derailed. Wild West. Pew, 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 pew. Those were 4 cool cases of Wild West. Outlaws. A time gone by. So I've been Nathaniel Avila.
And I've been Jessica Vega.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Vision podcast, home of Wacky Talkies, The Kingdom, Evil Exists, and many more.